Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back once again. Funday Sunday. I will be your host today, John McConnell. Vic is out there somewhere, but I don't know when he's going to pop on, so he might pop on maybe now. We'll see. But I want to welcome everybody back. Let's see if I can pull Vic in. Hopefully, he's ready to go. Let me let him give him a second. I just want to welcome you all back, and thanks for hanging with us. I'm back in the studio again. Thank God. Been missing my studio, so back here in the comfortable place. Let me see if I can pull Vic up. Hold on one sec. On mute, sir.
You hear me okay?
Oh yeah, got you now.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah.
What's up, man?
Different from my usual setup here, but
Got
I'm
some,
here
got
another
some,
week.
got some a little bit of shaky internet, but that's okay. It's understandable. You're out there in the forest.
Yeah. So it's a little bit here and there with the internet, but hopefully it evens out a little bit if I don't move the phone too much.
All good, man. All good. Yeah, back to the house, back to the studio. Love it.
How was the trip?
It was good. The last couple days was a little bit strange. I'm probably going to get into a bunch of that stuff now that it's all said and done. That's kind of the topic of today's show is overseas relocation for those who are interested in doing that. I get to
Hmm.
hang out with Dave and Allie. They were on the show a few months ago, and we did an interview with them, and they showed up here in Sicily. So I went and picked them up. We went and drove around a little bit, went and did some sightseeing, and then dropped them off so they could go hang out and hop back on the cruise ship and go to Naples. But yeah, it was good seeing them.
Awesome.
It's good seeing them.
Awesome. Good. It's fun when you can connect with somebody like that. You've talked to them in the past just via podcast or maybe online, and then bam, all of a sudden you see them. That's awesome. I've done that before, once or twice before. I really got to know the person if I'm going to meet them up.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's actually JP was the same way. JP is a really cool dude. Loved meeting him at the influencer conference. I met a few other people there that I've talked to on the phone or online somewhere, and got to
Good.
bump into a bunch of people there too. So yeah, it's always a good time.
Awesome.
And rolling back through the Rolodex of business cards and LinkedIn connections. So we're going to have a bunch of people lined up over the coming months to come on. Maybe some will be regular interviews, some will be on the show on the live stream on Sundays. So stay tuned for that. Really made a bunch of connections out there in Atlanta, and putting the word out. I mean, it seems like it's doing good and building the momentum that we've been trying to build either way. So yeah, so far so good.
Right.
We definitely dropped the book on the 4th. If you haven't heard about it or seen it yet, we've been getting this out. And if you see in the top corner, once I move this out of the way, you'll see the little QR code up there if you want to scan it and find the book. Did a little bit of updating and changing around to the studio a little bit here. So testing things, but had a new intro screen. I don't know if you saw the intro screen.
I did. No, I was having some trouble getting online here, but
Yeah, it's
I'm
all
sure I'll
good.
be able to check it out after. Yeah, so the easiest way to find the book, I think, is if you go on Amazon. I mean, everybody's on Amazon. Just go on Amazon and type in bottom line upfront book.
Yep,
Easiest way you can find it.
right there.
Yeah, easy.
And it'll come right up at the top of the list. Matter of fact, let me hit it again and show you. It comes up basically at the top of the list. So
Yep. There you go. Free for anybody who has Kindle Unlimited, and probably half the price of a cup of coffee if
that's
you
right.
don't have Kindle Unlimited. It helps support the channel 100%.
Yep. Yeah, that's the whole point, is to basically give you 10 short chapters on things that you should be thinking about when you get out, including what we're going to talk about today. Relocation and figuring out where you want to live is one of the chapters. But just 10 short chapters, really, really concise, kind of just give you some ideas to think about and start brewing in your mind if you're on the path to getting out of the military, whether you're retiring or transitioning, just to give everybody kind of a really good overview. We even have a chapter on like the Medicaid, like insurance, health insurance, at age 60 or whenever you do the blended retirement from Compo 2 and 3. So a little bit of something in there for everybody. And there goes Vic. Yeah. So again, and then of course, anything that comes in through the book, the QR code up there is also an Amazon affiliate link. So just full disclosure, if you do use that link to get the book, we will get a little bit of a kickback based on that, not meaning you have to pay more, but Amazon will actually give us back a little bit for every sale that comes through that link. So in any of the Amazon links that you see inside of the descriptions in any of the podcasts are the same. Let's see if I can bring Vic back up. I'll give him a minute to get relocated. So yeah, that all goes back into the podcast so that we can continue to build this out. We do pay for a lot of the stuff out of pocket. StreamYard for one. We use Riverside, and that is a kind of semi-sponsored thing that we do with them. So we're getting that, but we do pay for like Canva and all the things that we use, the camera gear and the microphones and everything we use. We've paid for that all out of pocket. So we try to just offset those costs and also figure out more creative, better ways to get good information out to the public, to you, the listener, you, the watcher, if you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, or if you're watching this or listening to it after the fact. These are live streams on Sundays. And also, if you want to participate in the conversation, you want to jump in the comments, feel free to jump in there and you can write us messages, let us know what your questions are, and we can try to answer those online as we're live. So I'll give Vic a minute to get settled. Let's see if I can pop him back on the screen here. But yeah, today basically I want to kind of dive into relocation. And just to give you a little bit of backstory, let's see if I can pull Vic back up. I think he's ready now.
Yeah, my bad.
You're good.
Oh, dude, I was trying to. So I'm trying to stay near the cabin because that's where the Wi-Fi is.
Yep.
And that's like I'm walking down. I don't know if you can see the it's completely forest over there. So
Yep.
There's no way I'm getting Wi-Fi out there. Plus, there's a horde of mosquitoes around my head.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that's also fun. I don't know if you can see them buzzing around the screen here.
Yeah, I can.
But, yeah, if I don't put in the headphones, then I can hear them buzzing around my head. So I'll keep the headphones in. The
Mosquito
fun
trauma.
of nature, man. This is what I needed in my life, was to get out and explore a little bit of nature. It was a mental health day off, right, or mental health weekend off, especially with the Dodger or the Padres losing. You know, I needed that mental health day off, but that really hit us hard. But yeah, just being out here is incredible, man. I just needed this, like a recharge. And if the Padres would have won, I would not have been on the podcast today, because I would have been heading back out to the stadium.
Yeah, I got a tiny bit of that here and there, especially when all the power and the internet went out where I was staying at for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Got a tiny little bit of that action out there in the woods and out there in nature. And literally the first night after the storm, you could go outside, since nobody had power, like the whole city was off, and you could literally look up and see the Milky Way, or at least part of it, whereas normally you just see the stars and stuff. So seeing the Milky Way, actually sitting in the middle of a city and seeing the Milky Way, is kind of a unique experience.
Yeah, no light pollution. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, it's the same way we have it here. We're surrounded by sequoia trees, and we looked up, and the kids wanted to come outside, and you can see all the stars and stuff out here. There's nothing really out here. You know, we're on the top of the mountain at this little campground cabins. I mean, it's beautiful. It's exactly what we needed.
Yeah, it's actually really good. That's kind of my recharge. One of my recharge places is out in the woods, out in the wilderness. That's why I take hikes a lot too, as well. I go up in the mountains, or I go in the forest and go hiking. So But yeah, that really all just kind of ties in to relocation, like what you're going to do after the military. A lot of people are focused on the job thing, and they want to know what to do, where to go, who's going to hire me, how do I get my resume together. But one that kind of gets put on the back burner, one of a few that gets put on the back burner, is like the relocation thing. I know you experienced the same thing. You were trying to figure it out at the, coming to crunch time to figure out if you guys want to stay there, if you want to move back to DC or whatever.
Dude,
So
it's a never ending thing. I'm still trying to figure it
yeah,
out.
yeah.
I just received a message on Facebook, and I was also reading Reddit too. It was somebody else
Mhm.
had mentioned, "Hey, look, I've been out for like a few years. I still don't feel at ease. I still don't feel like I've fully integrated into civilian life." And I'm like, dude, that day will come because you have no choice but to, embrace that. But yeah, that it definitely will affect you, and you're gonna feel after you get out that you've not yet found your path, found your way. I think everybody goes through all that, So exactly what you're saying, you have to find your way. You got to find your, you know. I'll let you talk about it. I got freaking mosquitoes over here coming in my face, my ears and shit.
All good, all good. Yeah, and even today I was talking with Dave and Allie. Dave's been out for quite a while. I think it's about 8 or 10 years. Has he been out? A couple of years, a
Hmm.
few years he's been out, and he was talking about that as well. He's like, "Look, I work fully remote, and or if I'm going to be working fully remote, he's like, just being outside of the United States and being an expat somewhere like
Hmm.
here or Germany or I got a couple friends that are looking at like Thailand as a spot where they want to kind of hang out and retire now that they've been out for a couple of years. And I think, I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea living outside of the United States, but there certainly is a buzz around the campfire, so to speak, no pun intended, um, of people who have certainly thought about it. It's crossed their mind. The VA rep that I spoke to, we had a long conversation about living outside of the United States. She'd been outside. She was in service for many years, retired out of the military. Now she works with the VA, and me and her had a long conversation about it as far as relocation. So I just want to kind of start with like, where do you look? What do what are some of the key factors of relocation? And I think one of them is for sure the job thing. Like, do you want to work in a GS position? Do you want to work as a contractor? Do you
Yeah,
want to work in a NAF position? Do you want to work in just a regular company? So that's one of the for sure things to look at. And I think that determines where you want to pick where you want to go, because depending on the cost of living, like in California, it's really super high, expensive. On the East Coast, the same way in a lot of places. In Europe, it's a little bit different. And some places are actually still pretty decently expensive, but there's some places here that are actually really cheap. And like if you think of a place like Thailand or, you know, some places in rural Japan can be fairly
oh yeah,
inexpensive.
oh yeah.
Yeah. My criteria was really find a place where I can live there and know I can live comfortably and be able to take care of my bills and still have money at the end of the day, um, with just a retirement check. If I get a job, it's a bonus. If I get VA benefits, it's 20, 30, 50, 100% VA disabled, that's an extra added bonus. But for me, it was really the base minimum was, can I live off of my retirement income? And this place where I'm at is basically that place.
Yeah.
I made that decision well before I got a job. So yeah, just on that.
Yeah, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. I like I had mentioned before, I've seen a ton of um, commentary on where can I move.
Mm,
There was one that I came across. It was a GS 11 position that the person had was going to accept, tentatively was going to accept, but they were asking the group, "Hey, can I actually make it in Hawaii with a GS 11?" And VA disability. And the answers were, look, it all depends on where on the island you're going to live, similar to like, hey, moving to Europe, there's little pockets here and there. But where exactly are you going to live? There's places like you're not living in Kailua, which is like a little beach town. You're probably living in the center of the island, right, where it's not close to the beach or anything like that. And even then, you're going to pay a premium. So it might not be your ideal place, but you really have to factor that stuff in. And a big piece of that is going on groups, asking questions. Um, Too many times I've seen people who stayed here in San Diego and cannot make it. Like then a year later they're moving to Texas. A year later they're moving anywhere else, right? She's like, damn, I didn't know that. Once I move out of base housing, I'm gonna have to pay all these, utility bills, and they add up.
Right.
And sometimes you cannot make it with just your retirement pay. So you have to really factor all that stuff in. Um, it also helps, like you mentioned, getting a NAF job or a GS job or something like that. That also helps. Uh, but you really have to do the calculations before you get out, and take into account if you're dual income, that's going to help you out. That's just another set of income that's going to be lumped in with whatever you're bringing in at the end of the month. If you have
Right.
VA disability, that's going to help you out. And the trick is not the trick, but the tricky part is when you're making all these decisions, you're still active duty. You're still
Right.
going through your BDD or your VA disability process, and you really don't know what your VA disability percentage is going to be. So you can't really use that as a income because you don't know if it's going to be 30%, 50, 100%. You really don't know. So you have to factor in what you're currently making active duty. You have to factor in what you're going to be making as a retiree, and your spouse's income or whoever else is helping you out. That was the issue that I was going through because we wanted to stay in San Diego. We I was putting us on a level, on a heightened alert level, um, meaning I'm very into the finances, and
Mhm.
I'm like, hey, look, we're not good. I don't want to make it to where we're living paycheck to paycheck. I hate that. I haven't done that for years, because I didn't know what I was going to be bringing in with VA disability or anything like that. So it was a little tough. But same as you just mentioned, you don't want to factor that in if you don't need to. That's just an extra bonus. Hey, look, if you happen to get 50%, you happen to get a check for 15, 1800, whatever it is, that's just extra. Try to live off of your retirement only, and that covers your lifestyle.
Yeah, that was really the biggest factor for me. And I kind of already predetermined the place. I would say one other thing along those same lines about location is if you still have a year or two or three left in the military,
Hmm.
depending on the job you're in, like most of us go TDY and most of us go TDY to some interesting places.
Oh, yeah.
Um, you may just go TDY to like Pittsburgh or something like that, or somewhere like Wisconsin.
Also an interesting place. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting place in its own right if you like cranberries and cold.
There you
Um,
go.
but I would take the time on those TDY trips rather than spending time trying to spend all the money you can on whatever restaurants and go see. Like if you go to Vegas, like most people just go to the strip and they go eat a lot of food and all this stuff. I would actually take the time if you're considering that place. Like take the time to spend a lot of time outside in the normal world in that place, meaning not hanging around the conference as much as
Yeah.
you normally would, or whatever working group that you happen to be going to, or planning conference, or whatever it happens to be. Like, take time and drive around the city, drive around the outskirts of the city, and see what it's
Yeah.
actually like. Especially if you get to go to Europe, if you go to Germany for like a European exercise or something like that for your unit or wherever you work at, because that's a free paid kind of testing trip to go see that place and see what it's all about. And if it's something that really kind of tugs at you, or if it's something that actually just like, this isn't the place for me, it doesn't make any sense. Um, and again, going back to Dave and Allie, Dave has been out for a while. He's lived his life. They moved from New England down to the East Coast and or down to DC area, down to Virginia area. And so they've been living there for a while, but he was like, dude, if and when it comes to it, like I would immediately like pack up everything and just go overseas somewhere. If I
Yeah.
could do that, if I can work remote or if I had to go find another job. And that kind of leads me into this whole job thing. There's multiple avenues of approach for a job. As I mentioned, there's GS jobs, there's NAF positions, just non-appropriated funds, and there's government contracting, and there's also civilian jobs. Like I have friends that were reservists who actually worked for like Continental Tire in Germany,
Right.
or they worked for some other companies in Germany or in Italy
Mhm.
as civilians, as like
Yeah.
plain Jane civilians paying German taxes or Italian taxes. So if that's something that's interesting to you and you want to do that as well. And usually a lot of times what happens is those folks, myself included, have a spouse who's actually from that country or from that location. And that kind of like sways the decision a little bit faster,
Right.
but not always the case, right?
Yeah. And I'd say it's okay to rent for a little bit. You don't have to
Mhm.
outright buy. Too many times I've seen people who they want to go somewhere and they want to, you know, put the pedal to the metal and just buy outright without actually being there. I mean, it happens all the time when you're PCSing, right? You know, somebody's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, let me look online here." No idea what the neighborhood is like. No idea. Just going off of whatever your realtor tells you, going off of whatever friends tell you who are stationed there. It's okay to rent for like a year until you get your feet on the ground. And the great thing about like GS jobs, and I'm not too well versed on NAF jobs, but the great thing about GS jobs is you can switch jobs once you got your foot in that door. You can
Mhm.
continue looking for jobs within that, hierarchy of admin or whatever your job entails, and just move around. I mean, there's open positions everywhere. You're like, hey man, this doesn't fit us. My wife is doing that right now. She
Yeah.
is working here in San Diego, and she's like, hey, what if we moved here? I'm like, hey babe, if you can find a job there, I will no, I we can rent out the house and then we'll move. I have zero ties to where we are right now. It's possibly because we've moved around so often in the military that it's like, you get antsy. You're like, I gotta go, I gotta go. What's next? What's the next adventure? But yeah, feel free to explore, rent a little bit. Just like John, just like you mentioned, uh, go out and see the neighborhoods. Don't just stay at the conference. Don't just stay at the TAD conference. Go see what normal people who are living in that situation, who are like families, what are they doing? Where are they going? What are the restaurants like? What's the housing? What's the criminal rates like? Just go around and explore. Get away from that TDY conference.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And to your point, like that's exactly kind of the point that I want to make with the government, at least government specific jobs,
Yep.
whether it's a GS position or GG, whatever it's called. I think it's just
Yes.
still called a GS position, which is one pot of money that's allocated through the federal government to pay
Mhm.
employees, whether they're working at the post office or whether they're working at like some naval command headquarters as a deputy commander or something like that as a civilian. Um, the NAF positions is another pot of money. It's kind of self-funded, but it's
Yep.
still a government position, right? So and they have their pluses and minuses. You can go online and look. I did some searching uh, earlier and was looking around and just trying to figure out some things. But of course, our good friend Reddit, that's where you get the most up to date and legit
The most
information.
accurate information.
Yeah, but if you see like what's the differences, and there's a whole bunch of answers here, but really you can go out there and you can find this information and see for yourself which is what. So for the government positions themselves, like you can literally go on USAJOBS and you can do job search and you will be able to filter or find out like specifically for NAF positions, specifically for GS positions. Generally speaking, the cool thing about it is if you have a government civilian position like your wife does, for example, and you guys want to move to say Phoenix, all she has to do is go look for a job in Phoenix, apply for the job, get hired, basically, essentially. It's not that easy, but um, within a reasonable amount of time. And then
Mhm.
you get the PCS move or not get the PCS move, depending on the job announcement and the position, and they'll move you for free, right?
Yeah,
So just
that's
like if
that's
you
a
were in the
great perk,
military.
man. That's a
Yeah,
great
it's
perk,
really good.
dude. Yeah, because I mean, we were looking around and just do it. Imagine how much a PCS move costs.
A
right?
lot.
If you're in the military, yeah, exactly. You have like the big freaking moving truck that comes and moves you. You know, they do all the work. That thing costs a lot. Imagine doing that and moving overseas. Not saying that you need to bring everything overseas, because I definitely wouldn't. I don't know if you did, John. I wouldn't. But the essentials you want to bring overseas, but even that still costs money, right? You have to pay for, extra baggage or whatever it is for the whole family if you have a
Yep.
family. But and
Yeah, I've
there's
been
nothing saying.
quoted
Go ahead.
tens of thousands of dollars to move my stuff over.
No way, man. I'd rather get a storage. I don't even want a storage. I would just sell that trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the storage, but yeah, it costs a lot of money, man. That's an excellent perk that they provide you if you get that job.
Yeah. And that's one of the main reasons that I tried to go that route. And I was looking at two different things. So, especially for overseas specifically, let's just kind of shift gears to overseas specifically. For a GS position overseas, generally speaking, there are some exceptions to the rules and there are some waivers that you can get. But generally speaking, if you take an overseas GS position, you're generally capped at 5 years in that position overseas. That means that after those 5 years, you have to move back to the States. You have to go back CONUS, and then you can then reapply in a couple of years to go back overseas. That's just the way it works. Like I said, there's waivers to that where you can get a year or two extension. There's the little dude.
Yeah.
You can get a year or two extension or something like that. Or if you're in some like really critical position, and they want to keep you there, then and you're like working for a general or like some high ranking official, they could potentially keep you there. But generally speaking, you've got a 5-year cap. So if you wanted to like test the waters and go overseas, if you haven't ever been, which I think most of us, if you spent 20 or something years in the military, if you haven't, you may or may not have been overseas. But if you spent enough time in the military already, you've probably been overseas at least once or twice. And it might have been just a stopover for a deployment, or you could have been stationed there. But generally speaking, if you wouldn't just try it out and test the waters, and 5 years really isn't anything. I mean, you've already spent 20,
Yep.
hopefully,
It goes by quick.
in the military. And as you know, 3 years into it, you're like, we got to move. So,
Yeah, I definitely know that. I feel that. So I'm willing to try that whole 5-year thing out, man. To be honest, as many other, military folks I've spoken to or retirees, it's a change of scenery, a change of pace is always welcome. So that's something I'm on the hunt for myself. And whether it be, I'd rather get into the GS system, um, personally, because it's what my wife knows, it's what I'm accustomed to at work and all that. But really, I miss the TSP, man. That's huge. The TSP was so easy for me to navigate, and I still have everything going on in there. I'd like to get my foot back into TSP. I have like 401ks and all that stuff, but it's just a matter of familiarity, right?
yeah.
So, wait, go ahead.
No, and then so like comparing that to the NAF positions, right? So NAF is again a government position. They do have 401k. They actually, from what I'm reading and seeing and looking at in the research, the NAF position retirement plan's actually a little bit better than the GS retirement plan, but I have to dig into the details of it. It looks like makes sense on the surface, but there are some upsides to NAF and there are some upsides to GS. It just depends on weighing the options of what you want to do. If you wanted to go and you say, for sure, like you want to go and be out of the country for 20 years or 10 years or whatever, and you don't want to deal with that cap, the NAF position would be the next best way to go. That's what I did. Generally speaking, the NAF positions pay a lot less than a GS position. So for example, like a GS 13 or 12 or something like that, that pays, 100+ K a year. Generally speaking, you're not going to find a NAF position right off the bat that's going to put you into that pay. And then also depending how the steps go on the GS side for your raises over time versus how there are no steps for a NAF. So it's kind of based on performance and annual reviews and things like that of what you get or you don't get. And again, it comes from a self-funded pot of money. So they can decide where they allocate that money and how they allocate that money. But on the NAF side, for sure, with the time requirement, there's no cap. Like there's zero cap on the NAF position, albeit it's going to be a less paying position, but it's also going to be probably a less stressed position because you're not beholden to working directly with a command or working in some organization where you've got to be at all these meetings and do all these things. NAF is more of like the blue collar side of the house. If you think of like the CDC, where you take your kids and drop them off for daycare, some of the MWR facilities, depending on what the position is, some of the base ops kind of things, base operations kind of things, a lot of those are NAF positions. So yes, blue collar, less pay, probably half, or maybe a little bit more than half, depending on what you negotiate. And then you have zero cap on your time. So if you want to stay for 60 more years doing a NAF position, you can literally do that and stay there and just hang out and do your thing.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the non-supervisory stuff, to be honest. Right. If I don't have to supervise and write reports on anybody, I'm a fan of that. Give me 1 second here, John.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and dig into some of the ways. Like I said, you can just go on USAJOBS and you can literally just pull up whatever job you're looking for and look for keywords. Like I can search for NAF and see what it says. Probably not going to pull up anything. No.
Yeah, my bad, man. I was as I was talking to you, a freaking deer and a buck just walked by. And also I got acorns the size of like,
oh wow,
yeah, look at those just falling around me, dude. You gotta watch out because they have a little point.
Yeah.
And I've got one in the back yesterday, so it's not fun. It's not fun. The wonders of being out in the woods.
You should go if you get a chance when you're walking around. I know they got pine trees there. If you find some old stumps in the ground that are like broken off or something like that,
Yeah.
and you go up and you kick them and they actually move a little bit, and you can wiggle them and get them out of the ground. That's actually, so what happens is the stump is there in the ground. As it's decomposing, all the resin goes into the middle of the stump and it kind of absorbs into the stump. And then at some point it releases from the ground. So you can literally just pull it out of the ground. And then if you smell it, it smells like turpentine almost. You can actually chop that up into little pieces and use that for fire starters. It's called fat wood.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole bunch of them here.
Pro tip. Fat wood is the best fire starter ever.
You got like a raccoon hat hanging somewhere in your room or something?
I do. It's right back there, right down there on that shelf. Spent a ton in the woods, ton of time.
I spent too much time in the woods, but doing land nav, which was not fun. That was voluntold fun.
Yeah, land nav is not fun at all.
No.
But yeah, kind of getting back to the thing with the NAF position, and the reason why I chose it, because I intend on staying here. But like I said, you can just go on USAJOBS. You can just punch in whatever you're looking for, and then just look and see if it's a NAF position or not. I don't know if there's a. Let me get my glasses on so I can see things. I wonder if you can do a filter for NAF. Let's just look for my favorite position, which is nope. So, let me get rid of this. That's probably why. NAF. There we go. So here's a bunch of NAF positions, NF5s, NF4s. Some of these are supervisory, but you do see things like human resources specialist, resource assistant, developmental. So they have a bunch of, there's a generalist position for an HRO, assistant human resources, supply technician, account technician, recreation assistant, recreation aid. So they got a ton of things. If you just type NAF, you'll see a ton of them. You'll see like, here's one in Korea. This one's at Carlisle Barracks. Here's one in Rock Island, Illinois. This one's in Maryland, multiple locations.
Normally the salary is normally a little bit lower than those, right? So that's like what equivalent to like a GS, 7?
Yeah, I mean this one, right? This NF5 is 104,000 in South Korea. So Camp Humphreys, if you're looking to go to Camp Humphreys in Korea and spend some time there, maybe you're married to a Korean and you want to just go and hang out in South Korea at Camp Humphreys and work there. That's paying 100 grand. That's not bad.
No, not bad.
Starting at 100 grand. So a lot of these will start at like 150, 90, 70, 35. And they have like a range between, whatever it is to 20 or 30,000 more than that, depending on the position, depending on how bad they need somebody hired in that position, they may be able to negotiate to the higher end of that pay band or pay range, I should say. It's not a pay band. But yeah, there's a ton of positions out there and they're all over the place, right? So for those, again, trying to go overseas or OCONUS, if you're intending to stay or if you would like to stay for longer than 5 years, NAF is the way to go. If you want to just go try it out for 5 years or you just want to get into a specific career path, then the GS position will also be available. If you're applying for these positions, and with the government positions, it's kind of give or take, depends on what the agency is, Department of the Army, Department of the Navy, depends on how fast they actually move. My position that I applied for took about 1.5 years from the time that I applied to the 10th of October when I'm actually on the books for them is about 1 year, 1.5 years is what it took.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of legwork on my part too as well, because we had to figure things out. And the SOFA agreement is kind of touchy-feely depending on where you're at. And it's different in every single country, right? So if you're in Germany, SOFA is different there. If you're in Germany as a retiree and you're not under SOFA, you have to go get a tax stamp card before you can go to the PX. And then before you leave the country again, if you're just visiting, you have to go and pay the taxes on that tax stamp card before you can leave the country. So
isn't that crazy?
In Italy, in Italy, it's not the case. You can just go to the PX and just shop and they don't care. So it just depends on where you're going and what the local laws are for that particular country and what agreement they have with the government. So that's kind of something to take into consideration as well.
Yeah, I know in Japan, when I was stationed out there, the NAV folks or whoever was just out there for work under SOFA rights could not use the commissary exchange unless they were retirees and they had a certificate or some kind of paperwork saying that they were retirees and they could use these resources. But other than that, if you're a contractor, that's no go. You couldn't use these things. You have to go live out in town. You have to go use the grocery stores out in town, which were a lot more expensive, right, than commissaries or anything like that, or exchanges. So unless I don't know, can that be written into a contract for a DAF or even like or like if you're a contractor? I'd have to look into that. Like I wonder if base privileges can be written into like the salary bonus or something. I don't know how that works.
It depends. It depends on the SOFA agreement with the country, right? In Germany, they have certain laws. In Italy, they have certain laws. In Spain, they have certain laws. In Korea, I'm sure they have certain laws. I did work as a contractor on and off for different government contracts.
Right.
Some were more civilian than the others. Some were more government than the others. So it really just depends on the contract, how it's structured, how it's written, and then what kind of agreement that the country has with the United States regarding their tax laws. You may get paid in euros, you may get paid in dollars, you may have to report both taxes to both countries. Like it just all depends on that kind of thing for contracting specifically. But yeah, I worked for several years in Germany as a contractor, on and off, and different varying degrees of contracts, from really, really huge contracts to really, really small contracts. And each one was different. So again, it's also a way to get over. I would say if you are stateside and you're trying to get overseas, you've got the kind of advantage because you're coming on as a new hire from the States to go over to that specific country. So you don't have to worry about kind of navigating like, oh, do I have to leave the country? If I'm already in the country, do I have to leave the country for 6 months or a year before I can actually then re-enter the country under SOFA or not? And depending on the country, it's just varies. In my case, luckily, Italy is a little bit more lenient. And that was one of the things that I had to figure out. And we got to a stopping point, like we hit a hurdle and we were trying to figure that out. And I had to reach out to Army Garrison in Vicenza, and I had to reach out to the local passport office here on the base. And I had to reach out to the civilian government office downtown and talk to them and kind of corroborate all that information together to find out what actually works. So, and it's a process. And then it was a matter of, okay, well, if I have to go back to the States, I'm not intending to stay back there for 6 or 8 or 10 months or a year. Like I want to know what the minimum time is that I can stay there, what the maximum that I'm looking at. So that came out to about 3 to 6 weeks was basically the kind of turnaround time for the visa. So that's some things to consider as well. And then again, cost of living, depending on where you're living at. If you're living near Wiesbaden, Germany, the cost of living is rather high. You're right next to Frankfurt, Germany. You're in a very developed European country, and higher taxes and higher cost of living. Whereas if you come to a place where I'm at, near Sigonella in Sicily, it's southern Italy. It's a small island. And it's very blue collar either way. So the mean income here on the local economy is pretty low, and the cost of living is quite lower than most other places in Europe, but you're still within Europe. And then take those kind of things into consideration. And look, you may need to be a GS, and you may need to be a GS 13, and you may need to be able to get all those extra pay benefits and potentially housing allowance, which is also a part of NAF, depending on the job announcement. So that's extra money as well.
If they pay for your move over there, right? Like I don't know what the term is, right? But if they pay
the relocation allowance,
the relocation allowance, if they pay for that to go over there, when your contract is up, will they pay for it to go back to the States or wherever your next move is?
Not necessarily.
One shot, one time thing.
It's one shot unless you pick up another job stateside or wherever else you want to go, and then and depending on the job announcement. Yeah.
Okay.
You just have to look in there. So let's actually pull up this Korea one, because I'm actually curious now, because this is a pretty high paying NAF position. So generally you got to look over here on this right hand side, and it'll say relocation expenses reimbursed or not. If yes, then you could potentially qualify for relocation assistance. If no, then probably not. But you also have to keep in mind that sometimes these job announcements are kind of blanket written, and sometimes that'll be a no, and you just have to contact the hiring agency to find out if that's actually no or not. If that's something that you need to reach out and ask them and see, hey, is this actually not reimbursable or allowed on this particular job announcement, or is this just something that didn't get edited or updated when you posted the job announcement? So those are the kind of things you need to keep an eye on.
Now, do they normally have a cap? Is there like a cap, like, hey, we won't reimburse more than 10,000 or something like that?
Generally speaking, it's basically whatever the maximum military allotment is for that. Generally speaking, they can say, okay, we'll only give you this much or whatever, depending on, especially for like a NAF position, they could probably say like, hey, we'll only give you this much. I don't know for sure, but that's my kind of thought process on it. On the GS position side, I believe it's just like if you're a GS9, you get a certain amount of housing relocation allowance. If you're a GS12, you get a little bit more. If you're GS13, if you have dependents or not. Basically the GS side kind of goes sort of in line with the military side, where the NAF side, they told me, well, we just, whatever, if it's 20,000 pounds worth of stuff and a vehicle and whatever, then we'll ship that. Generally, you won't get any extra baggage add-ons like professional materials like books and stuff like that, professional gear, pro gear. So that's generally not included. It's only generally included for military. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. But yeah, you just have to read through these job applications. And I'm sure if you're here listening or watching, you've seen USAJOBS at some point. You had to, if you went through the TAP process, or if you're going to go through the TAP process, you will go through USAJOBS. But yeah, you definitely want to read through these. Oh yeah. I think most of these NAP positions are.
Are they? Okay. So it's even better if you have like the 30% disability or like the veterans preference. That's even better. That works more in your favor, especially with like GS positions. Like I've applied to many GS positions, and they usually take a long time to get back to you, but I've received tons of like, hey, referred to hiring manager. And I just got a bunch of them in the last few weeks, and they normally take, probably a month or so to get back to you, unless it's like a direct hire where they can use you ASAP. But I've learned too that it's how you word your resume, and I'm gonna make like a resume master class. So my wife is GS. She sits through these GS classes. She works with HRO, and they know exactly what to look for. Um, and I'm like, hey, and I was always on my own doing that, right? Until I started asking her, like, hey, how do I get my foot in the door with this stuff? And she's like, oh, you got to word like this. You got to do this, do that. I'm like, huh. And then when I started doing that, that's when I started seeing more refer to hiring manager. And I'm just doing it as like a test at some point. I'm just applying for like a ton of freaking jobs as a test for the most part. If something happens, it happens. But
Right.
I think I'm gonna start putting together some kind of a resume hiring, master class or some sort to show exactly how to work things for like GS positions. Because I'm like, I think I found like the secret sauce to it, based on what she's telling me, based on what HRO is telling me, right, and what I'm reading online. And a lot of it has to do with, well, I won't spoil it for everybody. Once it comes out, it comes out. You can watch it on the Military Retirement Podcast and the Green Logbook. I'll upload them to both of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super exciting and things that I would have never thought about. Like, oh shit, you got to word it like this. You got to show this. Um, it's crazy because somebody actually reviews it.
Right.
Unbeknownst to me before, I thought it was just like a computer system. No, somebody
That's
actually
the first step,
reviews it.
right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So they look for the keywords and then somebody reviews all that stuff and then they see if like, oh, okay, because I assume there's got to be thousands of applications that come in if it's
Right.
open to the public, right? Especially for something like cybersecurity or IT or something,
Yeah.
because you can work anywhere in the country, especially if it's remote. So there's,
And they're kind of looking for those, like, did you just copy and paste the announcement into your
yes,
resume somewhere?
yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of stuff. The
yeah,
obvious
exactly,
things, of course,
yeah.
and then
So
some more
yeah,
detailed stuff.
yeah. So yeah, I've tried that before and it didn't go anywhere. Like
Right.
exactly, just as a test, I copied and pasted exactly what they were looking for into a resume, and of course that nothing happened with that, right? So I'm doing little tests here and there, but I think I'm getting the secret sauce to it.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
just had
it's
my
it's
sister
it's
test
it's
it
all in
out
the
the other
science.
day.
Yeah.
It is. And then, so a counter argument to all that is I was doing a test with my sister the other day. My sister's a complete civilian. She's never been in the military. The only
Yeah.
thing from the military she knows is what I've done. And we were talking about job stuff. And I was like, you should just look at, because she was looking at the position that I just got hired for. And she was like, that's kind of interesting that they'll pay for your move and all that stuff. And then they pay
Hmm.
you like a housing allowance as well on top of that, which is can be an additional 10, 20,
Yeah.
$1,000
Yeah. Huge.
onto whatever they're going to pay you. Right. So that's also a consideration. Like if you get a certain amount of pay and then you get the bump with the housing kind of stipend thing, that's something else to keep in consideration. And again, you have to read
Hmm.
through the announcements to see if they offer those kind of things, and then double check with the hiring officials to see if
Hmm.
it's actually that, or if it's not that, and they just kind of left it in
Right.
there from an old job
Right.
announcement. But yeah, my sister went on USAJOBS. She made an account a long time ago, but she never did anything with it. It literally just made a login. She went and put in an application for a position, and it was, I believe, a GS 12 or a 13 position. And again, she has no military background whatsoever. She's never worked in the GS system before.
Hmm.
Her first time in with whatever resume, I think she uploaded her resume. First time in, and she got um, selected as being eligible for the position, and they're going to review and see if they're going to send it to the hiring manager.
Oh, nice.
I was
Good.
like,
Good. Yeah.
what the hell? What is your
And
secret sauce? That's what I was trying to
yeah,
ask.
it's funny how that works, right?
No.
It's all dependent on the position, on your experience, and a big part of it, at least where I work, a big part of it, a big part of these GS civilians getting their job is who they know.
Exactly.
Because they're like, I get emails. I'm a contractor. I get emails constantly about open positions at my job, and the people who are hiring that are just down the hall. So if I
Right.
was interested in something like that, I just go over there. Hey, I saw you put an announcement for this. Something maybe I'm interested in putting in for. They're like, oh, we already know you. We already know your work product. Yeah, go ahead. And that's why you'll see things that are open for like 3 days, and then they close out because they already have somebody in mind. And
Yep.
then people beat themselves over it, beat themselves up over it. like, oh man, I didn't get the position. Well, chances are they already had somebody in mind,
Right.
So, and a lot of times when I apply to these things, if you scroll all the way down on the announcement, it'll have a point of contact on there.
Right.
And I'll contact them like, hey, look, just wondering why didn't I get referred for this position? Because when I first started applying, I was applying for literally positions that I had done in my 20-year career. And I'm
Mm.
like, oh, I know this thing inside and out, but I just didn't word it correctly. And when I asked the hiring person at the bottom, they're like, oh, we were looking for more experience in this. I'm like, well, I have experience in that. They're like, oh, please update your resume next time, or whatever, revamp your resume. I'm like, shoot, man, if I would have known better, I could have had that position, right? But it all goes with trying to figure things out. That's why I'm doing this test, like just applying to random stuff, right? Do I want to
Yep.
be a military police officer? No, hell no. But I'm applying to that stuff just to see how it all works.
Right. Yeah.
Just putting myself
I
out
think,
there as a test monkey.
yeah. And I mean, Justin Murphy, we had on the podcast before. If you haven't seen
right.
it, we've got a bunch of episodes with Justin. He's been on the live a couple times as well. He took the opposite approach as well. He was like, look, I know you've got the resume builder in there. I know you want it structured a certain way, but I'm just going to put in my resume the way I want to put it in. And he was actually getting picked up for 14s and 15 positions on USAJOBS as well. So that's definitely something to think about. Just it's a lot of testing, a lot of trying. Maybe if we get a master class put together for it, it's something you can look into, but it takes a little bit of time. You're gonna have to give yourself, it's not just a apply for 10 positions and you're going to get in. We've talked about this multiple times. It takes time and it takes persistence and it takes a little bit of tweaking and effort on your part, not just putting in the same resume for all the positions. They have to be tailored to each position.
Exactly.
So that's just things you have to think about. But as far as if you're looking at GS as the kind of pinnacle, I say pinnacle, it's not really a pinnacle, but if you want to look at it as the pinnacle of your kind of path to government civilian work, if you want to work in the government civilian sector and you want to be overseas, like contracting and these NAF positions can be a gateway to that. As you said, from the contracting perspective, you get these emails from the HROs within the organization. As a NAF position, it's the same way. You're in the government working for the government, and you can then reach out through that to find out if there's other GS positions open, or if they have like a job board or something internal to the organization where they're looking to hire GSs from that pool of NAF positions who people want to maybe bump their pay up a little bit or get into the system as a manager or something like that. So those are gateways too.
Yeah. And I will say it, I've seen a lot of people talking about this, like, hey, I'm an E7 with this knowledge. Does that equate to getting a GS 12 or 13?
Right.
No, it doesn't. It's a lot about your experience and your education. Now, if you're looking for like a director job, if you haven't held a director position before, it's going to be tough. Yeah. However, if you're doing like cybersecurity, IT, and you have the certs and you have the knowledge and experience, there's nothing saying that you can't get that. And I'll give you a quick example. I work with a prior E4. And I had no idea what his position was. I know what he did, and he's IT, and he holds a GS13 position. He was just an E4 just a few years ago, right? So he holds the certs, he has the knowledge. He's like the go-to guy. So they hired him for it. He was a GS2. He was a DoD contractor. A position opened up. He applied for it. They knew his work product. They knew what he was capable of. And he got that position. And I was like, holy crap. And we're the only two Marines prior Marines that work in that position. So he's always, we're always joking back and forth. And, it's cool. But I'm like, holy shit, man, that's awesome. A GS13 position, prior E4. You don't see a lot of that. He's a young dude. No. He's like in his mid-20s, right?
Yep.
But more power to him because he sought out the education, while he was a contractor. When you're a contractor, or even when you're a GS, if you lack the education on something, ask your management about it. Like, hey, look, I need to get smart on this.
Yep.
9 times out of 10, they're going to pay for that if it means you are bringing in more money and more experience to help the mission in that unit. So I did the same thing. I asked for education on certain things that I was doing, and they gave me access to this site called O'Reilly, kind of like Coursera, where you can get different certs and stuff like that, free
Yep.
access to that. So on my free time, I'm constantly on that thing, knocking out courses, just to make me a little bit smarter on what I'm doing and potentially
Mhm.
help me out in my job search later on.
And also building the muscle memory of just actively seeking out knowledge as you're going along.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, learning is continuous. It is.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if you're freaking 20 or 60. Learning is continuous, man.
Yeah. Especially if you want to
Yeah.
be in the job force, you have to continually educate yourself
yeah,
and
yeah.
and especially in like a cybersecurity or an IT role, or even if some of these upcoming AI positions that are going to be coming along down the pipe, you got to know your stuff.
There's a whole lot of AI stuff coming down, man. And that
Oh,
thing
yeah.
is, I was just listening to, and this is probably something that would interest you, John. I was just listening to a conversation on YouTube from the owner, or the CEO, I think it is. Well, let me connect my headphone here. Just disconnected. Being out here. Yeah, Chat GPT, his name. But he was just talking about how AI is, it's limitless. That is the future. It's going to be completely limitless, man. And I mean, for the better or for the worst. So chances are, if that's going to be part of our lives, we need to learn how to live with that. So though it's never really interested me in the past, I'm reading more about it than I ever have before on sites like O'Reilly or even Coursera, how to manage AI, because chances are it's going to be in your wheelhouse somewhere, at some point in time, and your job. Hey, how well here in 10 years, that shit's going to take over.
Yep.
How well do you know this? Well, I don't know it. I'm still, I know how to do HTML. Well, that's antiquated, man. We no longer do that. Chances are you need to learn how to update your skills, and your management can help you out with that.
Yeah, it's a kind of a double-edged sword, but yeah, I remember, I forget what article it was, but it was in the early 90s, where it's basically like a front page cover article on a big newspaper was like, oh yeah, the internet thing is a fad and this is only going to be here for a couple of years and it's going to blow over. And at the time, like nobody knew what www was, nobody knew what an RSS feed was, and like none of that stuff. Streaming wasn't even a thing. And that's basically where we are with AI. Like nobody, if you're not in the know, you don't know what a large language model is, or you don't know how to do prompt engineering, but that's going to be ubiquitous in a couple of years. And and the thing about it is not only is it going to be here soon, it's going to be here a lot sooner. It's going to take a lot less time for us to get to that point with AI than it did for us to get to that point with Web 2 and Web 1.0 and now Web 3. Kind of Web 2.5, but it's going to take a lot less time because that Moore's law trajectory doesn't apply anymore. Like it literally over the last 3-4 years, like the Moore's law trajectory has kind of gone out the window, and it's really literally like exponentially growing faster and faster and faster to get to that point where we go from, AI is this new fad thing and everybody's talking about it on TikTok, to every single person in every household in the world, not in just America or not just in developing countries, but in the world, is going to know what large language models are, how to build prompts, how to, program Chat GPT to do specific things and functions, how to build out voice activation through things like Siri or Google Home or whatever it happens to be, or Alexa. So those things are coming very, very, very fast, and it's going to be even faster than it took the web to get here. It's going to be probably 2 or 3 times faster than that.
I'd say these are exciting times we're living in, definitely. I mean, I just went on ChatGPT and had it write me an entire itinerary if I wanted to go to visit Portugal, what I can do, like based on and the prompts are easy. you are a seasoned world traveler. Build me a itinerary made for a family of so and so, of how many people in that family, on different things I can do for every hour. And it spit out exactly like, and I even went and researched this stuff. I'm like, that's pretty amazing, because it
Yeah.
searches everything online and within seconds. It's incredible. So yeah, these are exciting. And if you're not learning about it, you're getting left behind, unfortunately.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah. So John,
And
with
oh,
that,
by the
and I
way,
got to sign off here.
oh, okay.
John. Yeah, but I will catch up with you. Excited to be back on there and happy that you were back home in Italy.
So good to be back, man. Have fun out in the woods. Enjoy the rest of your trip. And I think you probably got till Tuesday, huh? Because Monday's a holiday. My first weekend on the job is a 3-day weekend.
That's right.
Yes.
Hey, you know what? That works. That works. Mine is. I'm not back until Tuesday too. So yeah,
Yep.
looking forward to it.
Cool. All right, man. Enjoy
All right,
your
brother.
extended weekend
See you here.
and say hi to the family for me.
Oh, we'll do, man. All right.
All right, man. Ciao. So yeah, that's it. Let me also go ahead and give you back some of your time here on this Sunday and just do a quick recap of what we kind of talked about. And we started to go down into the weeds with the AI stuff, but just a lot of things to keep in the back of your mind. It's kind of how we operate here is we give you a lot of fodder to then take and use and think about as you're getting ready to transition out of the military, as you're looking for a job, as you're looking for a place to relocate, as you're looking on how to structure your next move into your next position, into your next chapter of life. That's really kind of the thesis of all the stuff that we're doing and what it all kind of points back to when you step back away from it and look at it from a higher level view. But basically just retirement in general, OCONUS retirement specifically for today, because of the fact that I've finally completed this long transition journey. I mean, I got out at the end of 21 is when I retired from the Army. And from end of 21, November 21 till now, it's almost November 2024. I'm just starting to do a job. And that kind of in and of itself is just to show people like you don't necessarily have to get out of the military and go straight into a position. But if you are thinking about doing that and you know where you want to live, because that's a kind of a key factor to it. And if you've got kids still in the house or, something like that, or EFMP maybe might be your circumstances, that you can actually then kind of line these things up and put them in order so that you can make those kind of informed decisions, because making decisions without information and without data is just gambling, kind of rolling the dice. And we don't want you to do that. We want you to be well prepared. We want to be able to stick all of these things in your backpack so you have them with you. So as you're moving through this process, you've got the information that you need. And if there's any other information that we need to give you, anything that we haven't talked about in any of our podcasts or any of our live streams, we look forward to just let us know. Reach out in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, you have comments. If you're on LinkedIn, there should be some comments below the video. If you're on Facebook, there should be comment spots below there. You can leave those comments. If the live stream is set to start at a certain time on a certain day, depending on how far out we put that, you can actually put comments under there as well on some of the platforms. And even after the fact, you can go back. If you're watching this after it's streamed live and you're watching it maybe a week or two later, you can still go back in there and put comments of anything that you need to see or that you want us to cover. We've got some exciting stuff coming up in the future for some of these live streams and also for some interviews, because we've got a bunch of the folks that I met out at the influencer conference out in Atlanta, and I connected with a ton of folks, and we listed a bunch of them off last week. And those folks will be slowly, as they get back to their lives and start to decompress from the conference itself, we're going to be connecting and bringing some of those folks onto the show. So I'm excited for the next few months. We got a lot of things lined up, a lot of things in motion. And again, to recap, the OCONUS retirement is what I wanted to talk about specifically. There's multiple ways you can do it, whether you want to do government contracting, you want to do a GS position, you want to do a NAF position, understand the pluses and minuses of each of those in comparison. And you can also potentially, depending on your situation, just work for the local government if you wanted to, for a local company in that specific area where you want to go. See if you can visit these locations for a couple days, a week. If you're TDY and you happen to be at some of these locations, you can go out into the economy, out and around, and see what's going on. Do that so that you can get a better feel for it. Use USAJOBS if you're looking for the government specific positions. And if you're trying to stay in a place permanently and they have a base nearby and you want to work there and you don't mind taking a little bit of a pay cut, the NAF positions are the way to go. That's the one that I chose. It's a lot less stress. It's a lot less probably meetings and all that stuff that I would have to do as a GS. And the pay is a little bit less, but I get much more enjoyment out of life because of it. So I'll take the time and the enjoyment and the lower stress levels over the higher pay any day of the week, especially if you're living in a place that has a low cost of living either way. So with all that, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I will let you get back to your Sunday. Thank you, Vic, for coming on, even streaming from the woods. That's how we do it sometimes. We appreciate you. If you are checking us out on YouTube and you haven't liked and subscribed, go ahead and do that. We're trying to get those numbers up so that we can then bring this to a whole nother level and continue to level up as we go along this journey. And we love all of you. Have a great 3-day weekend. Enjoy your Monday off, and we will talk to you later.